Hey, this is Kristen with Collision Hub, and welcome to Repair University in our estimating series. Now, what we're going to try to cover in this whole series, start to finish, is everything you need to know about writing an estimate on different types of damage, from front to side, to rear, to airbags, to suspension, to everything. But what we're going to start with today is the pre-inspection routine, and often the most overlooked part of the estimating process. And to make sure we've covered it all, well, I've brought in one of the best estimators and estimating trainers I know, and that's Larry Montanez from P&L Consultants. Larry, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Kristen. Great to see you.
We got you out of New York. We got you down here.
Yeah, I came out to Chicago. Nice little trip.
Let's talk a little bit about, estimating, and is one of the most overlooked processes in the shop. And I think a lot of friction that we have that starts between the varying segments of the industry sometimes begin and end with that estimate. And a pre-inspection routine is a great thing to get nailed down to make sure that you're getting a good estimate from the beginning.
It's important nowadays for not only shop owners, estimators, and of course insurance companies to understand you're not estimating damages anymore. You really got to concentrate on being a damage assessor. You're assessing the amount of damage, and to that, I coined a phrase a while back in Hammer and Dolly magazine that I write for, of calling them para-engineers in a way. Kind of like a paralegal does a lot of work for the lawyer on the outside, and the lawyer is actually the one who litigates, but the para-engineer is the person who has to go over the car. They need to know as much as the technician does, even sometimes more, because they have to anticipate. It's like a chess game. You have to anticipate what kind of damage is going to be there later on, or what problems might come up.
What we're going to start with first is that no matter whether you're an insurance appraiser or you're an appraiser at a shop or a damage assessor, I do like that terminology because it is a high-tech field. I think sometimes we're not really guessing. We actually kind of know what's going into the estimate. Getting all your tools together up front. Now, when we talk about a pre-inspection routine, this is going to be something that you're going to do each and every time with each and every car. And that's the hard part, because you'll get in a rush, you'll get in a fit, it's Friday, you got to get an estimate uploaded, maybe you've got a 24-hour upload deadline from maybe an insurer if you're working on a DRP contract, and you have a rush to go to the car. But getting these things down up front is going to be a key to your success. So let's start off, Larry, with gathering the right tools. So each little estimator or each appraiser always has a set of tools with them. Now in the insurance industry, I had a pry bar, I kept a set of screwdrivers, I always had my safety glasses with me because I didn't know what I was going to run across, pulling up hoods and hoses, etc. What are some common tools that an appraiser should have with them and access to write an estimate?
Well, obviously the first thing is going to be a camera. I don't care if you're on the insurance side or the body shop side. You're going to need a good quality camera. Most shops and insurance companies are utilizing a point-and-shoot type camera. I know some companies are starting to use like the smartphones, like the iPhone or something like that, and they take pretty decent pictures, but outside of uploading just for customer information or texting, I really wouldn't recommend using an iPhone right now at this point. I haven't seen any real true apps that'll allow you to adjust the picture properly. It's either a good picture or it's a bad picture. There's nothing like in between. We can go over some stuff with point and shoot cameras later on. Another important factor would be a ruler. A ruler is a really important thing. You can measure certain parts of the car. You can take pictures of a ruler inside the picture so that the insurance company later on would have a subrogation type thing, or to prove damages or damage heights on one vehicle versus another vehicle. And as a DRP or non-DRP, it would also assist, because some states, like in New York, you're allowed to disassemble the car before the insurance company comes down, which is, in a way, it kind of spoils the damage look of the car because the bumper cover's off the car. You can always throw it back on, but at least a picture beforehand with a ruler in it does help out for them. Depends on the state. Like I know in New York, adjusters aren't going to be carrying some sort of pry bar or any type of tools to take anything apart. In some cases, they're not even allowed to start the car. But if you're allowed to carry some tools, yes, a pry bar would be good. A small little tool kit, maybe one of those Craftsman $100 kits, just carrying around to be able to get it off. And then obviously some sort of trim panel tool, fork type of thing to get some panels off would also be an assistance. Obviously the shop's going to have everything there already, but the big thing is you have to get behind the damage. It's like the old insurance company training that they did. They would take a bulb and put it inside of a paper bag, and everyone saw the bulb went in there, and then they'd break the bulb and go, do you pay for the bulb because now it's jingling? And half the class would say yes, half the class would say no. Well, truly, in essence, can you prove it's broken? You assume it's broken, you haven't seen it. So the idea is, let's get behind the damage, let's see what's really there.
Right now, you'll want to be able to pay attention to whether this car is a drive-in claim, whether it's at your shop or at your insurance facility. Don't disassemble something that's going to put the driver in jeopardy at a later date. But if you're looking at it at a tow yard or if it's a permanent drop-off at your facility, even if you can't get it into blueprinting and teardown, which is the best way to write the estimate or the repair appraisal or damage to the car, even the littlest bit of teardown is going to help you get a head up on the repair. Now, also don't forget other safety equipment. So I keep my safety glasses with me at all times, but I also carry different gloves and some different things to make sure specifically if it's a hybrid that I'm looking at that may have some damage to it, or if I've got a lot of broken glass or jagged metal. You don't want to get hurt while you're doing some of these inspections.
No, and one of the most important tools that anyone can have outside of the important stuff, the safety glasses, the gloves for different type of applications, but access to repair information. Now, I know a lot of the insurance companies may not be able to get that, but every insurance company has a direct repair program. Every insurance company has a direct repair shop, so they could always call one of the shops, and all shops should have some sort of access to some repair information. You can either use something like CCC's or AllData's or Mitchell's information system or specific manufacturers, but you should be able to call up and say, hey, what are the precautions for this vehicle? I'm working with a hybrid. Toyota gives the information away for free, as do all hybrid car makers. They give the emergency responders books for free online. You can actually put it into your iPhone or your iPad or your Android device as a PDF and actually open it up in your library, which would be nice.
Safety is critical. Now, if you go to the website after this episode airs, you'll be able to see what my kit looks like in my car with some of the tools that I used to carry around. And like Larry said, be careful. What I could do in the South with a pry bar probably wouldn't get away with on the East Coast or maybe even the West Coast. But now that we've got our tools together and we've set up our camera and we know what we're going to do, next thing we're usually going to look at is some sort of loss report. So there's something that either maybe the customer's filled out when they've come in, or we've gotten a loss report from maybe a DRP assignment. And one of the things I used to tell shops and my adjusters was, I got a call center taking those loss reports, and sometimes the information on them may or may not be clear, so you never want to assume that anything on the loss reports is correct. So we always used to ask them to review the loss reports. Any thoughts on the value of reviewing those?
I think it's an important factor. You really want to check the information. I've seen sometimes where the left side's reported as damage and it's not, it's really the right side. You want to know who was in the car, the conditions, the road conditions that day, which I don't see on many insurance reports. It might be on a police report, but not on an insurance report. That could be a factor later on, so getting it fresh in the person's mind, who was in the car, what positions they were sitting in, especially like a child safety seat or something like that, that usually has to be changed. Were there injuries? That could always prolong a claim as you go along. And then if you are a DRP, a direct repair program, you want to review the information that the claim person did send over to you, because it may not be as involved when you first call the initial claim in, but then when it gets assigned to a claim rep, it usually gets a lot more extensive. And some states require an insured or a claimant to fill out a separate police report or accident report for the Department of Motor Vehicles, which the insurance company wants to review and see, so that's your explanation of the accident, and they just fill in their claim report.
Right, so there's usually been some time that's passed from that initial reporting of the accident to the time that they've actually made it to your facility, or you as the adjuster are actually inspecting it wherever it may be, in a parking lot, at a garage, or at a shop. So having a review of that information. Now, the next important step, and one of the ones that I see most often overlooked, is before you write the very first line of your estimate, whether you're an insurance appraiser or you work for a shop, you must have a conversation with the customer or the vehicle owner in that case, because you got a lot of questions to ask, like Larry alluded to. You want to find out not only about the accident, what happened, who was there, but maybe some of those conditions, and Larry, like you said, the weather conditions. What are some factors that come into estimating by knowing the conditions? What are we looking for there?
Well, it basically goes back to engineering, like I said earlier, with being a power engineer. If the ground is very slick and wet, the car's going to slide around a lot, kind of like bumper cars in a fashion. Obviously, ice is going to be much slicker and have less friction than wet ground, and there's a ton of friction caused when there's dry ground. So if you have two cars that are on dry pavement, you would anticipate seeing at the accident scene besides parts, you would expect to see tire marks. Those tire marks are telling you that the car's trying to grip to the ground. So now you have, depending on how the angle in which they impacted each other and their approaches, you could have a lot of internal damage away from that area of damage or deeper into the vehicle. On wet pavement, you might not have as much internal damage, but then the cars start to turn laterally towards each other or away from each other, maybe impact other things. So you could have damage in the left front corner that also has damage in the left rear corner or the right rear corner of the car because of the way the car rotated. And then, of course, snow, you have a tendency of the cars impacting, sliding, and then going off left and right because the ground is so slick. You could wind up into a snow embankment. You could wind up going off an embankment and kind of like rolling the car for some reason. So these are important factors to know what happened and where it happened and what the conditions were on the roadway.
Right, and being in insurance management for so long, I can tell you, I never got a call that was a happy one. Whether it was the shop calling me or the customer, it was usually about a problem. And 9 times out of 10, it was usually something that amounted to not having the proper conversation up front. So like Larry alluded to, a vehicle hitting the rear, and we're focused on the rear damage, and maybe we've listed the right front tire or wheel as prior damage, but it ended up being the customer getting pushed into a curb after the rear impact. We've upset the customer. They don't have any confidence in us as the insurer or the repair shop in that case, simply because we didn't ask the right questions. Now, seat belts and the number of people in the car. Why is it so critical we know that?
Well, over the years, obviously, because insurance companies have paid out a lot of problems with, injuries, obviously car makers had to make cars safer. So now we have a lot of airbags. It's almost like that Sylvester Stallone movie, Demolition Man, where the foam pops inside the car. I mean, there's a lot of airbags in a car nowadays. And when you get into an accident, depending on where people are sitting, some seat belts on some manufacturers' cars are automatically made to lock up. Some will not lock up. If the seatbelt isn't buckled, it'll make the airbag deploy. In some cases, if the amount of applied force isn't enough for the collision pulse of the SRS system to read, it might just only lock up the seatbelt, not deploy the airbag. So you really need to know the operation statement from each manufacturer on the car, and then understand that a lot of German cars, the 3 back seatbelts will lock up because that's where children sit. So they don't even want that to second guess it. They want those to lock up. So you could have a frontal collision event, have the driver's airbag not deployed, the driver's seatbelt lock up, the passenger airbag deploy, and not the passenger seatbelt. That would tell me that the driver was buckled in, the car felt the driver wasn't in enough danger, so it didn't deploy the airbag, the seatbelt was enough. It tells me that there was a passenger in the passenger seat, most likely, not wearing this seatbelt, so the airbag deployed to protect them, and the 3 seatbelts in the back might be deployed, but tightened up across the seat, telling me that that system automatically locks up in case there's a child safety seat. It just locks automatically, which, you need to understand that. And there's a thumb test you can do, and a clicking test where you would actually try and pull in the seatbelt, see what happens, make sure it locks up, and then also lock it in. Or if you go to pull in a seatbelt and it doesn't move, obviously it's already deployed.
Right, but having that information and knowing when you go out to the car what you're looking for, whether, a lot of times when the car gets to you, that child seat has been removed because they've put it into the rental car or whatever. We may owe for a child seat, we may need to check a seat belt. There's all kinds of things that we tend to assume in the estimating process that just a few simple questions up front saves a lot of time with the customer, also builds a lot of customer loyalty. They feel like we really are taking some time with them. Now, I always like to end with, after I've kind of done my customer interview and I'm ready to go, I always like to go back and check out some of my OEM repair information or all data, et cetera, to see if there's anything special about that car I need to know before I start writing the estimate. What are some incidences where having the vehicle information prior to inspection is beneficial to the estimator?
It's the only way to repair a car, basically. I'll give you a few examples. Like Toyota, for example, you could have a mild collision event that causes a small scrape or light damage to a bumper fascia, and the shop's going to repair it. It didn't breach the outer cover, it just scraped the outer cover, and they fix it and they paint the bumper cover and they see that the airbag light is on. Well, Toyota says any collision event, if you remove the bolts for this passenger seat, if you change any components in the seat or even loosen the bolts, the seat has to be reset. It's basically like a scale, and that's to shut on and off the seat in the passenger side, depending on if it's a small child, a medium-sized adult, or a large adult. Knowing how the airbag system works or understanding what might happen there is important. Other vehicle makers, for example, BMW, almost all of BMW's procedures for their outer panels are required, anything that's welded to the car from the factory is required to be replaced with rivet bonding procedures, which is basically a structural adhesive and rivets. You cannot weld it, it's an improper repair. So that would be important because now you're buying 40, 50, 60 rivets and you're buying tubes of adhesive, which is, you know, upwards of $250, $300 a piece, you know, in some cases with some manufacturers.
Right.
So that's an important factor to know, because nowadays, based on the type of construction, the substrate they're using, the repair methodology from the manufacturer, the required procedure may be different from the original manufacturer's way of assembling the vehicle or attaching parts to each other.
Right, and getting that information up front is critical to the repair process and your cycle time. So, for instance, even if you're the appraiser looking at it in the tow yard or if you've got it within your shop, if you're not writing the correct estimate up front and you take that vehicle into process only to have it stall out for a large supplement, you're either going to kill your cycle time or you may end up with the supplement being to the effect of actually totaling the vehicle out and kind of messing up every car that's in front of or behind it. So repair information is critical, even down to the sectioning procedures. It's going to let you know what your R&I items or your R&R items are going to have to be on that. So, Larry, I think we've done our pre-inspection routine. Hopefully this will help everybody get one together. If you don't have a pre-inspection routine, please develop one now. Get together a checklist. Remind yourself to do it with every car, even if you just think it's a $500 scratch or if it's a $10,000 front-end collision. Having a repeatable procedure every time is going to keep you consistent and accurate with your appraisals. Now, we're going to come back in the next episode and we're going to talk about the actual inspection process at the vehicle and some things you need to know there. Thanks.